Hey everybody, how's it going? Michelle here from Northern Illinois Zone 5, and you are at Garden Gab at Gardening TLC. We are in the garden where we're going to talk about the garden, and today we are answering all of the questions from last month's videos. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you decided to join us. We are also going to be sharing viewer submission pictures today of what you guys sent in of beautiful things in your garden in the month of April and May. So come along today and let's just chat in the garden. The first video we're going to talk about was planting annual flower containers number 2. This was the video where Nature's Willow, which sells a pain relief and an itch relief cream, bath salts, things like that. Everything is all natural. Well, they sponsored the video and I made my 2 pots and dedicated them to Michelle over at Nature's Willow. In the pots, I mimicked a whole bunch of things that were actually ingredients in the Nature's Willow. We had a prize, we gave it away, it was a lot of fun. And here are the 2 pots behind me, just totally rocking out and looking great. The first question that came out of that video though came from me, Rudolph 6758. So many plants in that container. How big is it? I love the recipe. This is a 22-inch across the top container. They're just plastic. I actually got them from a client that didn't want the pots anymore, and I brought them home and I've been planting them up ever since. They flank the entrance to the sidewalk bed and I think they look absolutely fantastic. I love the color scheme that we put together. They're so bright and cheery, and I'll give you a close-up in just a little bit. Let's answer the rest of the questions. Patina JM 5963. Can you please share that tulip combination one more time? So at the time that I was making the pots, we had tulips that were blooming. That is the Royal Prince tulip combination. I think these pots are looking absolutely spectacular. I love how they're looking. So we ended up using 2 of the proven winner plants in here. We used the Saffron Finch Supertunia and we used the Peachy Keen Superbena. Then we just used a Pinto White zonal geranium in here. And geranium is one of the ingredients that was in Nature's Willow, and so it's helichrysum. And we ended up using this beautiful helichrysum right here. It's just the white licorice. We also put some creeping Jenny in here. This is the Aria. You can see it right there. And also another ingredient in here is eucalyptus. So we put a spiral eucalyptus in the middle. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this pot. And then we topped it off with curly willow because Nature's Willow is the name of the company that sponsored the video. Aren't those great? I love those. I love this next picture because I love how people repurpose things and they visualize different things in their garden. This is from Stay Grant. We're in Colorado Zone 5 and bought our home in spring 2020. My first landscaping effort was in 2021 and it was the west facing basement egress window. When she got it, it was a long, muddy slope to the window well, and then she started excavating the top of the hill by hand, took it down 2 feet to the surrounding ground level, and then she dug out steps down to the window well and terraced the side. That is some serious work if you have ever had to do anything like that, and I'm sure it took her a little bit to do it. All right, my husband built a 4 by 6 foot deck for the window well, and he and my son built the lattice arbor into the window well and retrained an existing Virginia creeper to cover it to provide shade for the window. That is an excellent, clever way to utilize this space. I love it. All right, now she planted the creeping phlox, the iberis, and the rock cress, which is a white star creeper, Veronica Waterbury Blue Speedwell, and it's in their 3rd year. And she writes, this is the 3rd year, and as Michelle said, the first year they slept, the 2nd year they crept, and the 3rd year they leapt. And look at them in all their glory. Isn't it awesome? Thank you so much, Steve, for sending this in. I love how you repurpose the area. The last question from Planting Annual Flower Containers 2 came from Tracy G 7225. I'm in Iowa. I was at Zone 5, changed to Zone 6, but I still prefer to garden like a 5. I was wondering if your zone changed as well. Well, I was a 5A, went to a 5B, so for me that made 0 difference whatsoever as far as what I'm gonna plant. I plant Zone 5 or colder, and I'm gonna stick with that. But what do the zones mean? Well, basically, the zones are what is your average cold temperature in the winter. So here in Zone 5, minus 20 is on average what we can hit, and we need to plant plants that can survive in that temperature zone. If you're in 6, guess what? That means it's minus 10. If you're in Zone 4, that means it's minus 30. So there's a 10-degree separation between the zones. Now, if you say 5A, 5B, that basically means they narrowed it just a little bit more, and there's a 5-degree separation between zone 5A and 5B. I just plant zone 5. I hope that answers your question. The next video that we did was landscape garden ideas, front yard design. I went into the archives, I pulled out an old design that I did, and then I kind of went over it with you to give you some ideas of a front yard garden design that had both shade and sun in it and an exposed porch. One of the questions that was generated from the video was, how do we send pictures to share? I always have that in the description of every video down at the bottom, so you can always send pictures. The one thing to remember though is when you send your pictures, one, make sure to tell me who you are, where you live, and the zone that you're in, and what are we looking at? That way we can share that information with our viewers, and hopefully I don't lose the email. 2, this is the address that you send it to, Michelle.tlcgiftandgarden@gmail.com. I'll get the pictures and be able to share them with everybody else. We always share pictures during Garden Gab. Also, when you send the picture, you want to do it in a landscape format where it's like this and it's long-wise, not short and narrow. The format that they use on YouTube won't fit that picture in there very well. I can use them, but it's not the greatest picture, and then I always have to fill in the side with something else. So long is always better. So send them in that way. This next picture is Basket of Gold Alyssum, planted from seed a couple of years ago. The beautiful bright flowers hold on for about 6 weeks in spring. This is from Shirley Brown. She lives in Farmington, Michigan, Zone 6. Isn't that beautiful? Who wouldn't want that blooming in their yard in April when there's not a lot going on? Absolutely gorgeous. The next video we did was the annual flower container marathon, where I ran around and I filled a bunch of pots all over the place, from some of my friends' businesses to Chick-fil-A to back to the store. So it was a marathon all day long. I ran around and filled pots. The first question that got asked was from Pam 1201 Brooks. I love the advice you provide with every program. I need some now. Last summer I had little black ants like crazy in my large flower pots. This spring they are still there. What should I do to get rid of them? I don't want to put my new plants in pots with ants. I'll just freshen the pots with fresh soil. This happens every year. So personally, I would replace all the dirt in those pots because they just keep coming up through it. And you either have to move the pots, or you need to do some kind of insecticide to get rid of the ants so they don't burrow back up into the pot. So you either move them or treat for the ants. But either way, I would totally change out the soil. Also, it might be a good idea to Google what it is that you're putting in those pots to see, are they attracting ants, and maybe switch up what you're planting if what you're planting is doing that. The next question came from Iris Veronica Mooney 7118. Another great video. You do have a lot of energy. Do you have a particular way to water the cone-shaped baskets? I bought 2 last year and want to keep the wicker in good shape. So you can see behind me, I have 2 of those wicker baskets that are shaped in cones. I totally lost the plastic after the second year, and now I line them with plastic. And you could use a plastic bag, you could use a cocoa liner. I use the sleeves that come on the hanging baskets from the store, and it protects the basket itself. So I'm in my 3rd year with these. If I get 5 years out of them, I'm feeling pretty good about that. They're not gonna last forever, but they will last a long time. I think your best bet would probably be to use a cocoa liner, but I don't want to put that in there. I just use the plastic, and for me, so far, so good. We did these in the video, and they are looking so nice. I love the combination of these flowers. If you want to know what they are, you'll have to check out the video. One of the other containers that we filled was in this chair, and it generated a question from Dina Swift 2693. What do you put in the chair to fit the flower? So I just thought I'd quickly show you the mechanics of this. So this chair has a hole cut out in it where the cushion was. So the cushion used to sit, right here, and it was attached in these holes. Now underneath here, you can see there is chicken wire that comes down underneath the chair, and then up on the top here, you can see where it's stapled right in there. And then there's a cocoa liner that I shoved down in there. So that was a preformed cocoa liner. I used a 12-inch liner and just sunk it in there. I filled it with dirt, and then I put these beautiful flowers in there that are doing totally awesome. The next video was a morning in the garden. Let's check it out, where we worked on 2 beds, the front driveway bed and the sidewalk bed where we did up some pots, we did some fertilizing, we put some pre-emergent down, we weeded, and we kind of assessed what was going on in the beds, and we planted a few things. So let's see what kind of questions we got from that one. I love daffodils. It's one of my favorite spring flowers. We got a question from Ann Hepner 2920. Another great video. You mentioned fertilizing tulips. I planted a bunch of daffodil bulbs last year and all I got was green leaves. Only a few bloomed. Do I need to fertilize them to get blooms next year? Now, all spring bulbs need to re-energize their bulbs for the next year to create blooms. If you have them planted in an area that has trees and the leaves come out on the trees and then you don't have sunlight hitting those bulbs, they probably aren't going to re-energize for the next year's blooms. The other thing is you don't ever cut the foliage back until it totally turns yellow and it's dying back. It takes 6 to 8 weeks for it to do that. Then you cut it back. So that way you've given enough time for the sun to re-energize the bulbs. Now I fertilize my bulbs at 3 different stages, kind of to hedge my bets because some of them are planted underneath trees and I'm hoping by giving them some food that will help in the re-energizing process because maybe they aren't getting enough sunlight. But over time you will have decline if they're not getting sunlight to re-energize. I actually fertilize them when I put them in, sprinkle it on the top. I also fertilize them when I start to see them emerge in the spring, and then I fertilize them again when they're getting ready to re-energize and they're done blooming. So all of those factors play a part in whether or not your bulbs will come back the next year. I love that I can give you updates on the pots that I did. All right, so the next question came from Nancy Culp 8545. I've always enjoyed watching your garden videos. I've got some tips that I've implemented in my own garden. I'm wondering what is the name of the grayish green begonia you mentioned. I could not bring the name up. I should have probably put the name up on the screen because sometimes you think, or sometimes I just talk too fast. All right. I ordered from my local garden center the Proven Winter Pegasus, which is close to what this one is, but they couldn't get it. And then she tried to get it, she couldn't find it, so she wants to know what it is. She's in Southeast Pennsylvania. So this one is called Gryphon, Gryphon, and it's doing beautifully. And my apologies for not enunciating that well enough and or putting the name on the screen. I should have done that. So while I'm sitting here enjoying this beautiful container, let's go to the next question. JD4246 asks, would a pre-emergent like preen also stop maple tree and rose of Sharon seedlings from growing? And would it help control wild violets? The answer is no. It does not stop those helicopter seeds. Typically what I'm doing with those is I don't mess with them. I find that if I rake them up, they sow into the ground and I have more trees. I just try to keep up with them. So I zone all of my beds into a day of the week so it's not so overwhelming. And I try to hit like these beds on Monday and the back beds on Tuesday and the garden in the front on Wednesday, so on and so forth. That way I keep up on the weeds. Even though I use a pre-emergent, it doesn't stop that. And you have to use something for wild violets that's specifically for wild violets. Be careful with what you're using with that, especially if they're in your lawn. Make sure that you're not buying something that's a kill-all that will take out your other plants or your lawn. So make sure whatever you buy is appropriate to what it is that you're trying to control. Rose of Sharon is the same way. Preen or snapshot or a pre-emergent is not going to work for that either. All right, the last question from A Morning in the Garden, let's check it out, came from Nancy Stapleton 872. Sometime can you go over the differences in containers, what they are good for and what things shouldn't be used for this or that? Example, concrete versus terracotta versus plastic. So I could probably put a video together like that when I teach my container class at the store. That's one of the things I talk about are the different containers and like the pros and cons and the good part of this container versus that container. The problem with doing a video like that is I live in zone 5, so I only have experience in zone 5. I don't know how concrete pots do in zone 3 or how some things do like plastic. Does it melt or fade or get thinner if I'm in zone 9 or 10 or really crazy hot? I'm not quite sure how they react in that. So I could do the video and talk about the generalities of that, but I don't know that I could do a video and be 100% this is what happens if you live in zone 3. So let me think about whether or not I should do that video or whether or not it would be something people even want to watch. So you guys weigh in on that below. I feel like if I was walking down the street and I saw this tree with these tulips, it would make me stop and take a look and just admire how beautiful they are, especially in April when you're jonesing for some blooms and some color. So this is, hi Michelle, this is Lana from Nebraska. You kindly gave me and another viewer ideas for my fence line. Thanks again for that. Here are my April garden pictures. I love this picture. The next video we did was back bed cleanup and planting. We went around the back bed by the deck. We planted herbs and seeds and cleaned it up. I talked about my hula hoe that I love. We just did a general cleanup back here. But I also talked about the food fertilizer that I use with an insecticide in it for my roses. So I use a Fertilome product right here. It is a rose and flower food with a systemic insecticide in it. And the way that works is you sprinkle it around your plant, you water it in, it comes up through the roots, through your plant, and then it kills the bugs that eat your plants. So we have a big problem with Japanese beetles and all of that. It lasts about 8 weeks. You have to reapply it through the summer. And so I talked about that product as well, so that if you choose to use it or choose not to use it, at least you can make your own decision about that. The first question also came from Lana, so thank you for your question. All right, I have bugs and Japanese beetles that decimate my climbing roses. I feed with David Austin food, and I always have to spray with 7 either late at night or early in the morning. So if you are using 7 to spray on your roses, please make sure you do that at night or after the bees and the butterflies have gone to bed, because that is poisonous to them and it will kill them. So you don't want to do it when they're actively on your flowers. All right, but she's saying that the Japanese beetles still eat her roses. She wants to know what the active ingredient is in the flower food that I use by Fertilome. So it is imidacloprid. I can't even say it. Imidacloprid. Imidacloprid. That's the active ingredient. And so that is a chemical that they made to mimic nicotine, which naturally repels a lot of bugs. That's the active ingredient. The next question came from Michelle Lebrecht 931. Love the planter combos. Very good choice. I love them too. All right. Do you protect your deck from water on your deck under the planters, or do you just not worry about it? My deck is old, and I don't worry about it. I'm going to run this deck into the ground, and once it doesn't stand up anymore, I will replace it with probably pavers or composite. But until that day, I don't worry about it. Question came from Brenda Hayes 3365. She had 2 questions. First, by using calendula as an aphid host plant, does the calendula end up looking terrible as the aphids attack it? And also, how far away does it need to be for it to actually work? So to sum up her question. So I have it planted in my raised garden beds next door, and I planted it last year as well. I still harvest the flowers. I get the black aphids over there, and what they do is they attack the leaves and the stems, and then I harvest the flowers. Now, if I get really close, can I see them? Absolutely. From a distance, can you tell it's covered with aphids? Not really. So my beds over there are probably 50 feet by 65 feet for all of the beds that are in there. I plant some in the middle beds and some on either end. Not a lot, but enough that I don't have aphids on anything else in my garden. The other thing too is I don't mind having the aphids in the garden. They don't do that much damage, but what I like about having them in the garden, even if they're on a host plant, is they're great food for beneficial insects that you want to come to your garden. I think there's some squirrels right above me on the roof, and they're fighting. Don't you dare. Come over here. They'll probably jump into the maple tree. All right, she had a second question. That one was about chive plants. So I have grown a chive for the first time. It's beautiful, and it's already 8 inches high. Yours is in bloom and is in beautiful, so what will happen next? Will it just die and disappear, or can I trim it down and regrow it? So that really depends on what zone you're in. Chives are hardy in zone 5 through probably 9. They are a perennial for me, so they come back every single year. I harvest mine throughout the whole entire summer. In fact, the 2 that I have back here, I've already harvested 3 times. And you can just keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and they'll just keep regrowing. For me, it's a perennial. They come back every year. Now remember, if you don't get the flowers off the top of it, they can spread all over the place, and then you'll have chives everywhere. So if you don't want spreading, make sure you cut those flowers off. FoxyMac7169 asked, does the Fertilome systemic work for slugs? I have a problem with slugs eating my hostas and my impatiens. I don't use that for those. I actually use the Captain Jack's bug and slug killer. I think that this works better for that particular problem. This is a beautiful lemony lace elderberry, and Christine Schuneman 4147 wrote, lemon lace elderberry takes shade I didn't know. This one only gets 3 to 4 hours of sun. This one gets just a little bit more, maybe 4 or 5 hours. And they are doing fabulous. The next video was shade gardening beyond hostas, and we talked about 12 things that you can plant in the shade besides a hosta and 3 ground covers. So hopefully this gave people some really good ideas of things that they can put in the shade. This question came from user-TD4PM6TK5J. I have a question. What do you think about buying half dead plants from Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart? Well, if they're truly half dead, it's a risk, and I don't know that I would buy it. Now, leggy, that's a different story. If they're leggy, you can cut them back, but they're still healthy, I would go for it. But half dead, you're really taking a risk. So I guess it's about whether or not you want to take that risk or you want to spend that money. Michael Rutledge, 5176. I have tons of ajuga in my lawn. Will a weed and feed eradicate it? Probably not. So as I said when I talked about the 3 ground covers that I talked about, somewhere, someplace, a ground cover is invasive. So you need to do your own homework on whether or not it's right for you or that particular ground cover works for you. In my garden, I talked about the 3 that are pretty well behaved where I live. Now, if you get it spreading into your lawn, you're probably going to have to use something like a Roundup product that's going to kill everything around it, including the ajuga. Then you're going to have to wait however long it tells you to wait on the label and reseed the area. I don't think there's anything that's just going to target that alone. Check out this beautiful peach tree. It's from Empress Kimberly. I love your screen name. She lives in New Hampshire Zone 6A. It's her favorite tree that blooms in the spring, and she's hoping that the blooms means lots of peaches. I hope you get lots of peaches too. All right, let's answer a few questions while we look at this beautiful peony. Isn't this great? This came from Kim in Iowa City, and it says, here is a bee enjoying my peony tree. So we love peony trees. They are so gorgeous. This one is, and I'm totally gonna mutilate this, but are you ready? I'll put it up on the screen too. Yashio Tushbaki. I don't know if I said that right, but she bought it from White Flower Farm 20 years ago. See, some plants have a seriously long lifespan. All right, let's answer some questions. Terry Pulse 97045 asks, I just picked up 18 baby hellebores. You lucky person. I have so much trouble finding baby hellebores because hellebores are expensive. Oh, but she got them from a lady changing her garden around. They are mystery colors, cream and pink for sure, but possibly more colors. She was wondering if they cross-pollinate, and the answer is yes, they will. The next question is from Judy Anderson, 8782. I have 2 lungwort I planted side by side. One is doing great and the other is getting black and seems to be dying. Help, what do I need to do to save this beautiful plant? It's hard to say what is wrong with your plant. It could be a bacterial infection, it could be a fungal infection, it could be so many different things, but a good resource for anybody out there is your local extension office. I am a master gardener with the University of Illinois Extension. It's a volunteer program where we go around and we volunteer hours every year at the extension office. Most of them have a plant clinic or a helpline that you can call, so check out the one in your area. They're usually listed by county, so you can check that out and hopefully get a better answer than I can give you. Garden bed design, planting the front garden was a fun video to do. I have been looking forward to putting in the design that we did in December in the garden bed, so we got everything planted. I am so ecstatic on how everything turned out. I just love it. So the first question came from Denise Waller 307, and she's asking if yarrow is invasive. Yes, some of it is. You really do need to do your homework before you plant yarrow. Some of the hybrid ones that they have out there are not invasive, but some of the older cultivars like Moonbeam, Paprika, I think there's one called Red Velvet, they all can really spread, so be careful. All right, we showed you a beautiful Baptisia, which I believe it's right over there. See it? It's kind of flopping right now from all the wind and the rain that we got over the last 3 days. This is the Solar Flare Baptisia right here, and somebody asked, that somebody being Kelly Michael C 9126, how long did it take the Baptisia to get that big? So usually it's going to take 3 to 4 years if you start with a 1 gallon plant for a Baptisia to get full grown. They need full sun. You can try, you know, part sun, but I find that they lean or they flop, and they do the best in full sun. which means 8 hours or more. I love your suggestion, Marilyn Moordock 3688. What do you think about gypsum to break up the area? Well, in this area, this is about 800 square feet, and gypsum's not cheap. It would have cost me probably 800 bucks just to amend gypsum in this area. And sometimes gypsum works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it depends on the clay that you have, and it's not a one and done. You have to keep applying it. So for me, it was cheaper actually to just plant things that would grow in the clay. I love this photo. It is so beautiful. It's like this, just this backdrop of those trees back there with the tulips in there. Oh, it just speaks to me. This is from Colleen in Duluth, Minnesota. And this is a beautiful photo of my tulips. And after a long, snowy, white winter, those tulips for her are always a welcoming sight. Beautiful. The picture was sent at the beginning of May, and this is a long one, from 7167714669. So anyways, I don't know your name, but these are gorgeous. Zone 6B, West New York, up front, yet to bloom, are allium foliage. Then she has Lady Jane colorblind wild tulips, which open and close every day. Then she has a few pink Fiona tulips, and the background is a classic pink peony. So she said the picture was from April. She sent it to me at the beginning of May. Beautiful. I love it. The last video we did was the May garden tour. I did it right at the end of May. We went around, we took a look at all the things that were going on in the garden. I love doing garden tours because I want to chronicle what's going on in the garden, and I want to see kind of how everything progresses. So the first question came from Dottie8461. So gorgeous. She wants to know, what do I use to keep the weeds out of the mulch? Well, I use this product right here, Snapshot. It's a pre-emergent that stops weed seed from germinating. I also love my little hula hoe right there, and I hand pull them. I zone the beds around the house into different areas. So the driveway bed and the sidewalk bed, I check those beds on Monday. The back bed on Tuesday, you know, the cottage garden on Wednesday, so on and so forth. That way nothing ever gets away from me. It's not overwhelming, and I can keep up on the weeds. But I'm telling you, pre-emergent for me was a game changer. And again, it's a chemical and you have to use your own choice to use it or not. But for me, oh, it makes my life so much easier. In the cottage garden, I have these solar lights that flank the walkway, and somebody wanted to know where I got them. So I actually got them at my garden center. I brought in solar lights one year, and I didn't bring enough of them in. I just brought like a little sampling in, and they didn't sell. So I had like 12 of these at the garden center. I had them for like 3 years. So I was like, let's take those home and we'll use them. But that's where they came from. Now, I was wrong when I answered her question about who the company was that they came from. I actually found one that still had a sticker on it. These came from Evergreen, and I don't know if you can still order them or not. They have a really cool pattern that they put out when they light, and they are solar. So eventually, you know, they probably won't work anymore, but I've had them for 3 years at the store, and they've been in the ground here going on their second year, and they all still work. So I'd say that's pretty good for a solar light. Last picture is a Zabrinus mallow from Peggy Mills. She lives in Kentucky Zone 7A. I will give you a little bit of caution though, even though I would love to have one of these, just know that these can freely reseed all over the place. But oh my gosh, I'm so jealous because that is absolutely stunning. That's a wrap for Garden Gab this month, you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I thought it was kind of long though, so I'm thinking that maybe I want to split it up into 2 videos. So I'm thinking one video would be where I'm sharing all of the viewer pictures and we're answering questions from the beginning of the month, and then at the end of the month, maybe we'll do a walk and talk, or I could do a live one. Kind of weigh in on that below and tell me what you guys want, because I try to cater my videos to what it is that you're actually looking for, and I don't ever want to have crazy long videos, and I thought that this one was kind of long, so let me know about that. Also, if you have something beautiful in your garden right now in the month of June, send me one picture in a landscape format, and where to send it is below in the description. I will share that with our viewers in the next Garden Gab, and I don't know if that'll be 1 or 2 videos. I'll look at like how many pages of questions get generated, and then decide probably, well, I'll decide before July, the second Saturday in July, if I'm going to split it up. Or actually, I'll have to decide here by next week, because I'll do half of June. Oh my, that's coming up really fast. But weigh in so that I can make a decision. All right, I'm Michelle, you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.